Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is entail. And this is another request from the viewer Luis. And I just want to say how much I appreciate hearing about what verbs people want to hear discussed. So now let's take a look at the verb entail and what it means. The most common way entail gets used is to mean to involve something as a necessary part of something else. It could also mean to involve something as an inevitable consequence. So, something that's just going to happen as a result of something else. Connected to this definition is the second one, to have a logically necessary consequence. So, many times, as people talk about doing one particular action, they're going to note that other actions are necessary parts or what is going to result from that overall thing. For now, you should know that entail is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, all you need to do is add ing to form entailing. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by adding ed. Our base verb, entail, ends in a voiced L sound. This means the ed ending is just going to make a D sound, and we're not going to add an extra syllable as we say it. So it should sound like this: entailed, entailed. Okay? Now, there are no phrasal verbs that we need to discuss today, so instead, we're going to move to doing a little verb tense practice. Today, we're going to talk about the past perfect and the simple future with a focus on will. Let's start with the past perfect. We use this verb tense to talk about completed actions that occurred before a certain point in the past or before another completed action in the past. So sometimes in perfect sentences, you will also see simple past tense verbs. The past perfect verbs are what happened first. To help us think about how we make past perfect sentences, I like to encourage my students to look at the name of this verb tense. So, past perfect, you're going to see two letter P's. This can help you remember you need two parts to make your verb. So, we're going to use the past form of have. That's had. And then we're going to use the participle form of the verb. And again, because entail is a regular verb, the participle form of the verb looks just like the simple past tense. So when we go to make an affirmative sentence, our structure is going to stay the same no matter what our subject is. So we'll have the subject, had, and then the participle form of the verb. Let's take a look at that in an example sentence. As a young child, his envisioned future had entailed living with his parents forever. Okay? Let's talk about what that sentence means. You might notice I use the adjective form of yesterday's verb of the day, envision, right? So here we're talking about the future this particular person imagined when they were a child, right? So as this person thinks about that, right, a necessary part to that picture in his mind was living with his parents for forever, right? For a time that does not end. Okay? Now, let's talk about making negative sentences in the past perfect. To do this, again, we start with our subject. We're going to use had not and then the participle form of the verb. You might also hear or see the contraction hadn't for had not. I've used that in my example. The role hadn't entailed delivering education in the community before the pandemic. So here we're talking about something that wasn't included. I saw a sentence very similar to this, talking about certain roles in public health. And so there were certain people or certain positions where they weren't going out and trying to educate or do that type of work, spread information through very specific programming or seminars. Now, this department was saying these jobs definitely include this, or that this is a necessary part to the role. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the past perfect. To do this, you start with had, then you're going to have your subject, and then the participle form the verb. Here's another example. Had the course entailed so much online engagement before the reaccreditation process? Okay. So here, I know I've got a very long word there, reaccreditation. That's something that's very important to colleges and universities. There are these bodies that look at the programming, how things are taught, the sequence, right? To sort of give a thumbs up, give approval that a particular program or a particular degree is educating people in ways that they need to be educated for particular jobs or roles in certain fields. Now, let's move on and talk about simple future sentences. Today, we're going to focus on making sentences with will. Will is most common when people make predictions about what they think will happen in the future. But you'll also hear it with promises and offers. You might see it with plans. That tends to be when people are a little less confident or less certain about those plans. But the nice thing about making sentences in the simple future with will is that our patterns stay at the same no matter what our subject is. So we'll have the subject, we'll see will, and then the base verb. No suffixes, no special endings. You can see that in my example here. The future will entail working anywhere you'd like and at any hours you'd like. Okay? We saw a writer making this prediction for how AI and other technology will change the way people work in the future. Now let's talk about making negative simple future sentences. To do this, we're going to start with our subject. We'll use will not and then the base verb. Sometimes people use a contraction form of will not. That's won't. WON apostrophe T. Let's take a look at negative simple future. Team personnel changes won't entail any reductions in headcount. Okay. This is a rather formal sentence, but to me, when I see something like this, it sounds like there are being changes made within an organization. But they're also making a promise that they're not going to reduce the number of workers on the team. Now, let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple future. To do this, we're going to start with will, right? Then we're going to have our subject. Then we're going to have our base verb. I have a very simple question here. It's, will this entail a long wait? Right? So perhaps someone has called a company for assistance in resolving some type of problem. Or perhaps you've approached a customer service desk with a question and they've asked you to wait for a moment, right? We want to know kind of, is this process going to include kind of a lengthy period of time to wait? Now we're going to spend just a moment looking at one related word. And I want to point out that entailed, which might look like the past tense or the participle form of our verb here, can also be used as an adjective. When we use the word as an adjective, it means involved with or following from something, and following by logical necessity or as some type of consequence. And that word consequence usually has a rather negative meaning, so we might think kind of a negative result and something not so good that will happen as a result. So let's take a look at this word as an adjective in a sentence. We've been following the new regulations despite the entailed inconvenience. Regulation is another word for rules. So here someone is saying we are following the rules, right? But connected to following those rules are more inconveniences. Maybe something takes longer or there's more steps, right? So it's included or it's following from those particular rules. Thanks again to Luis for suggesting today's verb. Thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great day.